Hi, this is Ibs Abdul Halim and welcome to Ibs Prime TV. In this video, we will be discussing about the types of communication. So what is communication? Depending on what is being considered, communication as a term takes on different contexts resulting in people having different views on communication types. Since communication is generally defined as the exchange of thoughts, ideas, concepts, and views between or among two or more people, various contexts come into play. Context is the circumstance or environment in which communication takes place. Such a circumstance may include the physical or actual setting, the value position of a speaker or listener, and the relevance or appropriateness of a message conveyed. It focuses on certain communication processes and even groupings of people that constitute a communication situation. Different contexts can impact one's communication. Each communication type is governed by a particular circumstance. Thus, it is essential to pay attention to the interplay or factors surrounding the context of communication, which may be physical, cultural, social, and psychological in nature. Communication may be then classified according to communication mode, context, and purpose and style. The types of communication according to mode are verbal and nonverbal, and visual communication. Effective communication calls for the blending of these two types. One cannot be separated from one another. For instance, door-to-door salespersons who demonstrate product knowledge can only be effective if they know how to properly punctuate what they say with proper gestures and facial expressions. Their communication with the customer begins upon greeting him or her with a welcoming smile, then asserting customer needs and answering customer queries, enhanced by gesture and a friendly, happy, and pleasant disposition. It is only through this mode that salesperson with excellent communication skills are able to provide the best information needed, thereby convincing the client to patronize their products. When you were in senior high school, you were trained to blend verbal and nonverbal modes of communication. In fact, when meeting people for the first time, as what you may have experienced many times, the initial meeting when you speak during the first few minutes is significant as it leaves a lasting impression on your listeners. You show interest in meeting these people by acknowledging their presence through an amiable, congenial disposition and a smiling face. Rather than just speaking, it is to use the nonverbal code through a handshake, an approving facial expression, and a kind disposition or character. Visual communication, on the other hand, is a type of communication that uses visuals to convey information and or messages. Some examples are signs, symbols, imagery, maps, graphs, charts, photos, drawings, or illustrations, and even various forms of electronic communication. Some examples of electronic communication symbols or images are the emojis, emoticons, and animation, among others, to convey the writer's emotions or clarify the intent of the message sender. These are achieved through digital modes or text. How these symbols are interpreted is very crucial in visual communication. There are some instances when visual communication is classified under nonverbal communication. Whatever the classification is, note that this type has now become pervasive in communication. It is then important that the receiver of the message is able to decode the meaning correctly and contextualizing the information received. Visual communication now occupies an important place in any work environment. For instance, during presentations, instructors, managers, doctors, lawyers, legislators, and the like use visual to transfer data into digestible information. Very likely, they will have greater success in catching the attention of the audience, making the latter easily recall the information. What makes visual communication even more advantageous is that it makes use of technology that provides apps or applications, videos, and images that rely less on the printed word, making presentations more interesting. This leaves a powerful effect on the audience and prospective clients. Speakers or presenters should, however, be mindful of the content of their presentation since wrong and irrelevant information may lead to miscommunication or communication breakdown, thereby defeating the very purpose of the use of visuals. Likewise, they should pay attention to graphic elements such as position, color, size, shape, and orientation, as all these play an important role in the presentation of slides. Audience size should be considered as well when preparing slides presentation or other form of visuals. Next, we have the types of communication according to context. In this subsection, context in communication is referred to as a composite of people interacting with each other. Communication may also be classified according to context: interpersonal, interpersonal, extended, organizational communication, and intercultural communication. The Latin prefix intra means within or inside. Intrapersonal communication then means talking to oneself. Some label it as self or inner talk, inner monologue, or inner dialogue. Psychologists call it with other names such as self-verbalization or self-statements. Do you find it normal to talk to yourself? Some says it is. Some says it's not. The gauge, however, rests on the frequency of the occurrence and how you handle such. For instance, if you find yourself talking to yourself, there is really no need for you to answer back. You talk to yourself because you think that there is the need to boost your confidence when you are nervous to speak in front of an audience. Appraise yourself that you perform a good job, or console yourself that you did a task poorly. Moreover, engaging in inner speech such as fantasizing or daydreaming is not bad as long as you are able to distinguish it from reality. Self talk can be advantageous as it can enable you to practice what you ought to say in times when you lack the motivation and confidence to speak. One magic statement that you can try is, I can do it. Saying this over and over again will give you positive reinforcement that you can do things courageously and that it is not impossible to do so. Furthermore, as you respond to life challenges, you may also find yourself verbalizing your thoughts and feelings. It is then important that as you introspect, you are able to improve your own decisions in life and likewise enhance your self worth as a person. As opposed to intra, the Latin prefix inter means between, among, and together. An interactive exchange takes place as interpersonal communication takes place. However, as it occurs, a transaction does not necessarily take place since it can only be a simple interaction such as greetings, getting to know a person, or ordinary conversations that happen between or among the interactants. It may occur in dyads or small groups, also known as group communication. A communication situation is interpersonal if it is meant to establish or deepen one's relationship with others. However, if the objective is to achieve something at the end of the conversation, it becomes transactional. While the former is characterized by less seriousness and formality, the latter is more formal and profound. Whereas interpersonal talks are meant for maintaining social relationships, transactional talks aim to accomplish or resolve something at the end of the conversation. So, this is an example of interpersonal communication. Hello, I'm Enzo Ramos, and you? Oh, I am Benice Mendoza. Glad to meet you. How are you related to the bride? She is my cousin. Her mom and mine are sisters. How about you? She was my high school classmate. I never knew anything about her personal life, so we were kind of surprised when she sent us an invitation. As always, she is very private. I see. Well, She's really like that. Ever since when we were kid, she has always been a very quiet person. And this is an example for transactional communication. Excuse me, would you know how to get to the nearest mall? Yes, in fact, you may go there on foot or simply take a jeepney. If you walk, it will take you about 20 minutes to get there. You can just take the exit gate near the hospital, then turn left and walk straight ahead. You won't miss it because of the big sign. Jeepneys take the same route, and it should not take you more than 10 minutes, even with the traffic. Thank you very much. I think I will just take the public transportation as I am running out of time. You have been really helpful. Thanks again. Extended communication involves the use of electronic media. Unlike before, when it only called for the use of television and radio, nowadays, the description of extended communication may be expanded as to include tele, audio, or phone conferencing, that is, video conferencing, Skype calls, and other technological means. For example, linked by a telecommunication system, people who are far apart or are far from the venue can participate in a meeting or a conferencing. In an e-conferencing like this, participants may not be physically present but are still be able to track down the lectures and participate actively because of the mass articulation and dissemination of information, allowing speakers to reach the wider group of listeners. Since extended communication is public in nature, speakers are expected to be prepared when they speak, making their language more formal. With the use of electronic media, messages are transmitted quickly. For instance, with the use of the internet, recorded videos may be transmitted in seconds or minutes and may be viewed by a greater number of people. With extended communication, your own thinking, behavior, and attitude may be influenced by other people, and you may be persuaded to take the views you hear. It is important then that you weigh what you hear and assess them against those beliefs that you hold on to so you do not get easily swayed by other people's convictions. Next, we have the organizational communication. With this type, the focus is on the role that communication plays in organizational context. Organizations comprise individuals who work for the company. When you graduate, for example, you become a professional, either working for a company or putting up your own. Whichever, you should know that each organization has expectations that you, as a communication professional, should meet or that you, as the owner, may establish. For an organization to be successful, a system of communication should be put in place. A set of rules or standard for communication protocol should be made clear so that communication patterns are established. On the part of the individual, you should be equipped with the needed oral and written communication skills that the organization expects you to possess. There are two types of organizational structure. One is formal and two is informal. Formal structure allows communication to take place via designated channels of message flow between position in the organization. This may make use of four approaches: downward communication, upward communication, horizontal communication, and crosswise communication. As the term implies, downward communication is the type that flows from upper to lower positions. That is, president to a manager or supervisor, or a manager to an ordinary staff. The flow of communication is top down or from a supervisor to a subordinate, usually asking certain individuals to perform a certain task. Conversely, message transmission in upward communication is bottom up, in which subordinates send communication to their superiors or bosses, bearing their views or feedback on organizational policies, issues related to their job, and the like. Horizontal communication is lateral in approach as it takes place among people belonging to the same level but coming from different departments or units to facilitate performance of tasks through proper coordination. Crosswise approach is diagonal in nature as employees from different units or departments working at various levels communicate with each other. Each of these communication approaches has its own advantages and disadvantages. Note that these structurals are usually presented in a company's organizational chart and policy manuals. Informal communication, on the other hand, comes from unofficial channels of message flow, also known as grapevine. Messages coming from the different levels of the organization are transmitted. This occurs due to the dissatisfaction of some employees accompanied by uncertainty, such as superiors playing favorite and unfavorable or unacceptable company rules and regulations. Some employees even resort to baseless gossips and rumors, which spread like wildfire. Tracing the origin of rumors is almost next to impossible. In fact, when some people are confronted, they impute the blame to others so they can get out of the mess quickly. Each organization has its own culture. This is referred to as organizational culture. Based on its history and development, an organization develops its own core values, mission and vision statements, goals, and objectives. Organizational culture is of utmost significance since it will dictate the kind of behaviors that employees should possess, as well as the extent of commitment expected from them by the organization. They all share in the values, practices, vision, and mission of the organization. Peter Drucker's famous quote, "Company cultures are like country cultures. Never trying to change one. Try instead to work with what you've got," underscores the view that indeed culture is within the control of the entrepreneur or company owner. If at the outset you think you cannot adapt to the organization's culture, better look for another job or workplace where you will be happy and in harmony with your superiors and colleagues. Another type of communication is intercultural communication. As the term implies, it is communication between or among people having different linguistic, religious, ethnic, social, and professional backgrounds. Even gender difference affects communication. Individuals having different orientations communicate and interpret messages differently. This particularly happens with nonverbal communication. For instance, Australians consider eye contact as important in assessing the sincerity of a person, while for Indian, looking straight into the eyes of a person while talking is inappropriate. This does not, however, mean that they are dishonest or insincere. Moreover, Indians interpret waving of hands from side to side as no or go away, while it means hello among Westerners. For Filipinos, twitching of lips means to refer to something or someone. When someone asks, "Where's my book?" instead of responding, "There it is," the response may be twitching or puckering lips. When seen by people from other cultures, such facial expression may be taken to mean as seduction. It is important then not to be judgmental or to rush into interpretations, as cultures sometimes vary enormously. Similarly, linguistic differences are of the essence. With the advent of world Englishes, different cultures develop different lexicon, peculiar only to the speech community. In the Philippines, a local variety of English called Philippine English has been developed, which has introduced lexical innovation, not found or used in other varieties such as tries, batchmate, CR, salons, barangay captains, and high blood. Even in terms of pronunciation, words are pronounced differently by Filipinos, which to some are considered erroneous. For instance, these, supposedly pronounced with a hard th, represented with a the, is pronounced instead with a d by the average Filipino since hard th is not part of the Filipino phonology. Finally, communication may be classified according to purpose and style. Earlier, formal and informal communication have been discussed in relation to organization communication. Similarly, the types of communication in relation to purpose and style are formal and informal. However, Rather than focusing on the transmission of message and message flow, the focus here is on the communication setting and the mode of delivery. Formal communication employs formal language delivered orally or in written form. Lectures, public talks or speeches, research and project proposals, reports, and business letters, among others, are all considered formal situations and writings. Note that while lectures and speeches are delivered orally, the texts have been thought out carefully and written well before they are delivered. To inform, to entertain, and to persuade are the main objectives of this type of communication. On the other hand, informal communication certainly does not employ formal language. It involves personal or ordinary conversations with friends, family members, or acquaintances about everything under the sun. The mode may be oral as in face-to-face, ordinary or everyday talks and phone calls, or written as in the case of email messages, personal notes, letters, or text messages. The purpose is simply to socialize and enhance relationships. To sum it up, there are various types of communication. These types can be divided according to mode, context, and purpose and style. In terms of communication mode, the types of communication are verbal, nonverbal, and visual. In terms of context, the communication types are intrapersonal, interpersonal, extended, organization, and intercultural. In terms of purpose and style, the types of communication are formal and informal. Verbal and nonverbal codes should complement each other. With visual communication, interpretation of signs and symbols is crucial since people have different ways of interpreting them. It is important to always contextualize the symbols or sign received in order to arrive at the correct interpretation. In any organization, a system of communication should be put in place. Transmission of message and message flow always play an important role in effective organizational communication. People have different linguistic, religious, ethnic, social, and professional backgrounds. It is then necessary to pay attention to intercultural communication to avoid miscommunication or communication breakdown. Formal communication and informal communication have different uses depending on the situation. Both types may be oral or written mode. This time around, let's try to